Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Local Law 97 in District 25. My name is Greg. I work for Councilmember Shaker Krishnan as his Legislative and Budget Director, and I'm going to be your MC for the night. So thank you all for coming out and attending, and thank you also to our presenters who you will hear from in a little bit. To start, I wanted to let you all know that interpretation is available. So Laura, if you could jump in Spanish and Eddie as well in Mandarin.
Okay. Buenas tardes. Si necesita servicio de interpretación al español, por favor oprima el botón de lenguaje en la parte inferior de la pantalla y elija español. Gracias. Thank you.
各位朋友，大家好。今天呢，我们这个活动呢是有中文翻译的。那麻烦大家，如果需要中文翻译的话呢，下面你的画面的下方呢会有一个好像地球一样的一个图标，然后你按进去呢就可以看见中文翻译。这个活动是有中文华语翻译的。谢谢。Thank you.
Thank you all. So next, we're going to have some opening remarks. We have joining us today the privilege of being joined by the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, Elijah Hutchinson. Elijah, would you mind giving some opening remarks?
Sure. Hi everybody. It's great to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me to open up your session. It's really helpful to have on the ground conversations with people about how we're meeting our ambitious climate targets. And doing this kind of work where we bring you all of the available knowledge and know-how and resources and expertise that we have on our end will help us all get to the place where we need to be with doing these very important energy efficiency retrofits for our large buildings across New York City. I am the newly appointed Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. It's been about 2 months since I've started, and Local Law 97 is one of those really landmark legislative actions that happened some years ago, and now is the time when we're developing the programs and the policies so that building owners can be in compliance with reducing greenhouse gas emissions from buildings by 80% by 2050. This is a transition that is happening all across the city and involving all New Yorkers. We, as a city of New York, are really trying to transition into a clean energy future that includes running New York City and New York State on 100% renewable energy. That includes reducing our greenhouse gas emissions from our building stock, but it also includes things like reducing emissions from our transportation sector, our food sector, our waste streams, and looking at all of these things together to figure out how we can tackle the climate challenge from all ends. So I'm really excited that we are able to provide these resources to you all. You're going to hear from a few people to talk about all of the details of our programs and how we can assist. But the main message is to go to NYC Accelerator. NYC Accelerator is what we've set up as a one-stop shop for all of you to be able to get that direct one-on-one attention to understand all of the incentives and financial support that may be available for you as a building owner, but to also make sure you're tapping into all the right programs and following the process in accordance with Local Law 97. And it is important that we get this right. Our buildings are a major source of greenhouse gas emissions, and we can't tackle our climate challenge without addressing buildings in New York City because New Yorkers are already very efficient in a way that we take up less space than most Americans, we drive less than most Americans, and so our building stock and our aging building stock is one of those critical components that needs to be addressed in order for us to meet our ambitious climate target. So I thank you to the council member and his staff for hosting us today. This is a one conversation that we're having, but you'll see Once you sign up for the accelerator, that'll be the beginning of a long-term engagement with you going forward. And if there's any questions, we're here to answer your questions and be of assistance through the chat. And we're excited for the presentations to follow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elijah, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us tonight. I now want to turn it over to Councilmember Shaker Krishnan, who has joined us today, the council member for the 25th District, to give some opening remarks. Shaker?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much, Elijah and Greg. I'm Councilmember Shaker Krishnan. It's so nice to see you all on. Unfortunately, I can only stay on for about a minute as I'm walking my kids home from after school. And I promised them that if they really listen, while Dad did his introduction, we can give them a little treat afterwards when we get home. So hopefully they listen. But I want to thank Elijah so much for joining. A big thank you to NYC Accelerator and the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice, as well as our DP Commissioner, who's been really great to work with as well. We thought it was important to do this event today to really make sure that we as a community and our buildings, we know what the requirements are with Local Law 97, since it's going to be, the deadlines are coming up, and to make sure that we as a neighborhood have the resources that we needed from our city government to make sure our buildings are brought into compliance and can follow all the rules and guidelines laid out when this law was enacted in the last two council sessions ago. But we felt it was really important, and it was our priority as an office to make sure, as these laws are coming up now, in making our community and our buildings more resilient and sustainable, that's only really possible to do if our buildings and our community have the resources that we need and the support that we need to make these transitions. And so that's why I'm really glad that we're doing today's forum. Please ask your questions, make sure you get the information you need, or reach out to our office if you need more information. We're here to connect you all with the resources to make sure this is as smooth as possible. I want to say a big thank you to our Legislative Director, Greg Clark, and our District Director, Waylai Rice, for organizing today's forum as well. As I said before, reach out to us anytime. And thank you to all the city agencies from the administration side for joining us today for this informative session. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Shaker. And now make sure your boys get that treat that they definitely deserve.
They earned it. They earned it.
Absolutely. Before we turn it over to our presenters, I want to go through a few housekeeping items. So first, you all are more than encouraged to use the Q&A function you should see at the bottom of the Zoom webinar. And questions will be taken at the end. So after all of the presentations have been done, we will have a few minutes for Q&A. Also, please know that while you may not see your question come up in the Q&A box, we are receiving them on our end, so they will be flagged for our presenters. So to start, I want to introduce Lisa Grayson Zugmuth from NYC Accelerator to open us up with the presentations. Lisa, take it away.
Hi, thank you, Greg. And let me pause for a minute and get the presentation up on the screen, and let me know when you can see it. Hopefully I've got the right screen up.
We can see it.
Perfect, thank you. And good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend this event. And a special thanks to you and Councilmember Krishnan and the staff for organizing this important event, and also to the Mayor's Office and Executive Director Elijah Hutchinson for your leadership. Also, thank you to Con Ed and National Grid for participating in this event this evening. As Greg said, my name is Lisa Grayson. I am the Deputy Program Manager for the New York City Accelerator. Tonight, I'm also joined by my colleague, Andrew Chintz, who is our finance specialist. So during this presentation, I will begin by providing an overview of the Accelerator program. Then we'll discuss the origins of LL97 in the context of New York City's decarbonization plan. Then we'll touch on LL97 in more detail, and we'll conclude by highlighting the various services offered by the Accelerator and provide detail on financing assistance offered by our program. So without any further delay, let's jump in. So if you're not familiar with the program, you may be wondering, what is the New York City Accelerator? The New York City Accelerator is a city-backed program that helps building stakeholders meet compliance requirements for local laws, achieve energy savings, and reduce carbon emissions across New York City buildings. We achieve our goals by providing free technical guidance and assistance to help you identify building upgrades to help meet emission limits established under local energy laws. Also by connecting building decision makers with service providers and financial incentives and financing such as PACE, which we'll cover in more detail later in the presentation. So how does our program work? All of our services are free, and we primarily work with any privately owned building that's larger than 5,000 square feet. For smaller buildings, we typically refer them to one of our partner organizations, such as one of the NYSERDA and clean energy hubs that specialize in this market segment. In terms of how the process works, a building stakeholder would give us a call, send us an email, and then we assign them to a dedicated account manager. This account manager will provide them with objective yet customized advice to the individual building needs. To give you an example of one of the buildings we're working with, I'd like to highlight the Fairview Co-op located in Kew Gardens, Queens. This co-op building has 424 units and about 1,300 residents. They have since upgraded to more efficient LED lighting with controls and also have installed solar panels on the roof. They're currently planning to install electric heat pumps and hot water heaters, and we're supporting them to identify incentives and financing options to cover these costs. So what is LL97? To fully understand LL97 and other building energy laws, it's important to take a step back and understand the reason why the law is important to New York City's future. In New York City, nearly 70% of the city's emissions come from buildings. And by 2050, 90% of our existing buildings will still be here. In addition to this, it's important to note that New York City has committed to achieving carbon neutrality by the year 2050. That means that in order to achieve this goal, we need to tackle the largest contributor of greenhouse gas emissions, which are the buildings. To this end, the city passed a series of decarbonization policies, including the Climate Mobilization Act of 2019. The CMA contains 4 main laws, including LL97, which is the central piece of law ensuring the city meets its climate goals. With that framing in mind, we'll dive into LL97 in more detail over the next few slides. At a high level, LL97 aims to decrease carbon emissions in New York City buildings by at least 40% by 2030 and reach carbon neutrality by 2050. The law consists of 2 main sections, Article 320, which sets emission limits for covered buildings, and Article 321, which provides additional pathways for affordable housing buildings as well as houses of worship. For buildings covered under Article 320, which mainly covers market rate buildings, the first limits will be applied starting in 2024 through 2029. The second set kicks in 2030 to 2034. Lower limits will then follow in 2035 and beyond to set us on a track to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. The bar chart on the right provides clear visualization on this process. Starting from the left, you'll see that the city's carbonization levels in our baseline year, which is 2005, represented by the black bar. Moving to the right, you can see the following 3 bars in the chart decrease progressively, getting us to the targeted carbon neutrality by 2050. It's important to note that based on 2022 benchmarking data, only 11% of the buildings are projected to be out of compliance for the first cycle, which is 2023 to 2029. The bar chart on the right provides clear visualization representation of this process. Starting on the left, you can see the city's carbon emission levels in our baseline year, which is 2005, represented by the black bar. Whoops, I'm sorry, I'm scooting down here. Okay. In terms of affordable housing buildings, some buildings have the option of either meeting their 2020-30 limits early or implementing the prescriptive pathway prescriptive energy conservation measures, which we'll discuss in more detail later in the presentation. As you all may be aware, DOB released a new set of proposed rules to guide the implementation of LL97. The key items contained in the proposed rules are: they outlined penalty mitigation pathways that cover unforeseen situations, as well as a good faith effort pathway. They created a new credit for buildings that comply early to doing electrification work. So for example, if you convert to electric heat pumps for your building heating systems or hot water before 2030, you will receive a considerable credit toward your emission reduction targets. You will also receive a more favorable credit if you install the system before 2027. It's also important to note that these credits could be used to mitigate penalties up until 2036. Lastly, they outline penalties and reporting requirements for affordable housing buildings and houses of worship. In the next few slides, we'll go into more detail regarding two components of LL97, starting with Article 320. One of the key questions we receive on the program is what type of measures buildings can expect to undertake to get below their emission limits. To answer this question, we developed a chart that gives you some insights about the different types of measures we would recommend to achieve the desired emission reductions. Starting at the top, if your building's already performing close to the 2030 targets, we'd recommend that you invest in building maintenance, install low-flow water fixtures to reduce water heating and usage costs, do air sealing to your building to reduce drafts and minimize energy loss, and make improvements to your heating systems to make them more efficient. If your building is significantly above the 2030 targets, we suggest that you complete all of the measures I just noted above, plus the 4 additional ones listed in the center of the chart. If your building is in the 20th percentile, meaning that 80% of the buildings are performing better than yours, we recommend all the previous measures, plus installing heat pump hot water heaters and upgrading old windows. It's important to note that this list is not prescriptive and are not meant to be examples of the types of projects you could pursue. The recommendations we would provide to you would take into account your specific building needs, the age of your equipment, and other factors that are specific to your building. Closing out this section, I want to briefly highlight one of the penalty mitigation approaches that I alluded to earlier in the presentation. In this slide, we will focus on the decarbonization path option under the good faith effort pathway. Under this plan, buildings will need to outline concrete steps that they intend to take toward decarbonization that will result in them achieving their 2024 targets by 2027. And work to meet their 2030 targets on time by 2030. The plan is due May 1st, 2025. However, I should also caution that if the key milestones and conditions are not met within the stated timelines, penalties can be issued retroactively. Now moving on to Article 321. In the next few slides, we'll go into more detail on the section of the law most relevant to affordable buildings. This chart highlights the various compliance pathways for affordable housing buildings as well as houses of worship. I won't go into depth into each of the various pathways, as our account managers can help you determine which path your building qualifies under. I just want to make sure that you're aware that depending on the number of rent regulated units your building has, among other factors, you may have a different compliance pathway under LL97. In this slide, we provide an overview of the types of measures covered under the PECMs. To clarify this, this is applicable to buildings with more than 35% rent regulated units, HDFC co-ops, buildings with one or more units that receive federal project-based funding or that participate in NYCHA Pact. I highlight this slide to illustrate that measures range from general measures such as weatherizing and air sealing to more specific measures such as replacing or repairing steam traps. In the next few slides, I'll conclude by highlighting the various services of the accelerator. At a high level, the accelerator team supports your LL97 compliance by helping to clarify various LL97 requirements and different pathways. We identify your building's current GHG emissions and compare those to your building's limits. We determine which pathways are appropriate for your building. We assist in pulling together various incentives and financing offerings that are applicable to your building. And we assist in identifying service providers to work on these projects in your buildings. Generally, providing support through the whole process, engaging where you need us and as you need us each step of the way. We've developed and deployed an energy snapshot tool on our website to allow building stakeholders to get some preliminary information about where their building stands in terms of local law compliance. If you haven't used this tool, I'd recommend you go on our website and put in your address, and you can pull up some great information about your building, its compliance status, and some additional information about reductions based on some basic energy efficiency measures. As a program, we also maintain an active list of qualified local service providers that you can find on our website through this lookup tool. Here you can find vendors to help you install your energy projects. Together with your assigned account manager, you can find the right team members to help you achieve your decarbonization goals. Our program team is here to help you through every step of the process. We're happy to work with you to help navigate all the different project stages. In closing, I'd like to highlight a sample of the various incentive and financing options available to you. As you can see, there are multiple utility, federal, state, and city agencies that offer help. By working with our program, you'd have a streamlined access to these services, and as your account manager, would help you identify those that are most relevant to your building's specific needs. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Andrew Chintz, our financing specialist, who will expand on the financing assistance that we provide. So Andrew, I will advance your slides for you and we'll dive in.
Thank you, Lisa. Hello, everybody. As Lisa said, I'm Andrew Chintz, the financing specialist with the New York City Accelerator. And I'm going to just supplement and just kind of add on or pick up where Lisa left off in explaining the various resources that the Accelerator provides and focus on the financing. And I'll just give a very high overview of kind of how we approach financing, what the different types of financing are available for energy efficiency or clean energy projects, and kind of just touch on a few examples Again, this is very high level, but the main point is just for everyone to know that financing does exist and that we can help you access it. And just one comment before we go further, when we talk about financing, probably aware there are incentives and rebates from the utilities and NYSERDA, and that money is available and it can help reduce the cost of your project. And when we talk about financing, we're financing the amount after those incentives, so kind of the net project cost. You can go to the next slide, Lisa, thanks. So just a little bit on the service that we provide for financing. As Lisa said, you'll get an account manager at the accelerator, and they'll be helping you with various aspects of the building. And when you want to finance the building, I would get involved and kind of look at the type of building and the use and the size and the type of projects you're going to do and what kind of financing you already have on your building. And then from there, kind of direct you to the various financing options that make sense, that are relevant for your building and your project. And I would connect you with those lenders and help you navigate through that process. And I think you can just go to the next slide, please. Great. So why do we finance? This might be basic to some of you, but obviously it's for not having to come up with the money up front and being able to fund it and then pay it over time. And there's various reasons. And I really just wanted to bring this slide up because I want everyone to realize that there is a unique thing about financing energy efficiency. There's often savings associated with the work that you do. Often you're making the building more efficient from an energy standpoint. And so these savings will help you offset the financing costs over time. And in some cases, the savings can be so great that they can even offset the entire financing payment. Of course, that's just case by case, but just, it's an important point to remember in financing for these projects. You can go to the next slide, please. So how do we approach the financing for your project? We kind of look at what's the building's life cycle. And by that, we mean usually when a building is built or there's a mortgage associated with it. And when that mortgage comes due, it's a good time for building owners to start to reinvest in the project, to do capital improvements, and just basic upkeep for the building. So if you are coming towards the end of your building life cycle, the mortgage is coming due in the next 1 or 2 years, that's a perfectly good place to just combine the work that you're trying to do to comply with Local Law 97 and include it in your mortgage. In some cases, the mortgage lenders, if you're not at that point, at the end of the cycle, some of your mortgage lender might even give you a supplemental mortgage that you can tack onto your existing mortgage. So those are the end of the cycle type financing products, but most buildings are not at the end of their building cycle. So we do have what we call mid-cycle stage financing projects or financing products. You can go to the next slide. So just to kind of put them all in context here, as I mentioned, mortgage loans for the end of the cycle. We also have what's called green mortgage loans, which is really just a mortgage loan, but the lender is understanding that these improvements that you're doing are going to have savings in the future. And so they will possibly underwrite those savings and they can give you more money in the mortgage, increased proceeds to do the work. And in some cases, they'll lower the interest rate as well. Mid-cycle financing products, what we have is we have New York City Accelerator PACE financing. Some of you may have heard about. I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. The other category is we have these specialty finance companies. There can be local green banks or other types of nonprofits and mission-driven lenders that are specifically in this business to help get this work done. You can go to the next slide. The other, there's actually we should have another slide there, but maybe it's, yeah, there it is. So just two more types of products in the mid-cycle range. I'm sorry, that's not there should be, try to go to the next, there. So the other two products in the mid-cycle category are equipment loans. And these are, pretty standard, and you may have seen these just for other types of equipment, but they will finance some of the work and the equipment associated with the work. They're offered by different lenders. They are usually short term, and the rates might be higher typically, but they are an option, and they are good for if you're doing just a single type of project or a single measure, and they're quick to get. The other thing we have is called non-debt financing, and basically that's a service provider. They come in and offer you an energy service agreement. Sometimes they're called as a service. And basically they'll do all the work. They'll assess your building. They'll help you determine the projects you can do. They'll install the projects, do the construction, and they'll also fund it. So you then enter into a service contract, which is kind of like a lease, and you'll pay the service provider back over about 10 or 15 years. And often these work best when there is a lot of savings associated with the work you're doing. You can go to the next slide, please. So I think we got out of order here. There should be the PACE slide next. Okay, there it is. So New York City Accelerator PACE financing, you might have heard about PACE. It stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. This was actually authorized under Local Law 96 that was passed alongside Local Law 97 under the Climate Mobilization Act. And it was intended to be a way to help pay for the work you need to do to comply with Local Law 97. And it's basically using a very old established and effective financing that we use to finance public projects. And the project is financed and built, and it's the property owners who benefit from it are assessed a charge on their tax bill, an assessment that will help pay for it. So we're kind of using that here. The public benefit that we're doing, that we're able to use this type of financing is that we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But instead of building a public project, we're doing work to your private building. So what this allows is 100% financing. And it also, the law allows you to go out a term that is as long as the useful life of the improvements. And often this will be 20 or more years. And so that's the real benefit for PACE, is that we now have long-term financing. And again, back to that point, if the long-term financing and the smaller payments that come from the long-term financing make it more affordable and make it more possible to have it be offset by the savings. So that's what PACE is. If you were to sell your building, it just transfers to the new owner because it's just a line item in your tax bill. And you can also, in our program, finance or refund projects that you've already paid for in the last 3 years. So PACE is a great option. It doesn't always work. It's a public-private partnership. It's administered by the city through an organization they contract with, and all the lenders are private. They don't like to do projects that are smaller than 500,000, and we have many buildings that have projects smaller than that. We can't do condominiums with PACE because we have a commercial PACE program, and condominiums are really single home homeowner units. And so the other thing is, because you're paying the bill on the tax, paying the financing on the tax bill, your mortgage lender needs to consent to this. So these are the kind of things that can make it difficult to do PACE. So we have other products now that can do similar things if PACE doesn't work. So you can go to the next slide. I'm just going to share a couple of quick examples. The Catalyst loan is offered by Inclusive Prosperity Capital. It's one of the non-profit mission-driven lenders. They'll do a lot of what PACE does. They can give you 20-year financing, so you get that long-term benefit. It's not on the tax bill, so you don't have the issues with your mortgage lender, the potential issues. They will do condos. They're focused on all multifamily. They'll do small loans as small as $50,000, and they'll also finance some of the health and safety improvements, but most of it has to be for energy. So that's one alternative to PACE, and very popular along with PACE. The next slide is another example from another specialty lender, the New York City Energy Efficiency Corporation. They're kind of like our local green bank. They have developed the Multifamily Express Green Loan for loans that are between $200,000 and $750,000. It's for co-ops and condos only. It's a 10-year loan at a 7% rate, and they'll drop the rate to 6.5% if you're working with the accelerator. So this is also very streamlined. They can get it done in 6 weeks, and the costs up front are quite low. So again, these are just some examples of what we can bring to you, and they're being used in the market, and we can help you access them. So I think there's one more slide here. This is a snapshot of a roadmap that we've created. It's part of our financing toolkit that the accelerator can provide for you, and it's a good overview and talks about some of the things I've been talking about. But really, the main thing and the main takeaway again is that you know that that financing exists, and also to please come to the accelerator, because we can get in and really understand everything that you're doing, and customize our services to what you need, including the financing. Thanks, I'll stop. I think the next speaker is probably Con Edison.
Awesome. Yes, I would love to bring up Louis Rizzo, or sorry, not Louis Rizzo, Kimberly Lewis from Con Edison to give a brief presentation.
Hey, thanks for having me here tonight. So you can hopefully see my screen. Okay, so I'm here tonight. I am the multifamily program manager at Con Edison. I'm also representing our low middle income program today. So I'm going to share a little bit about our programs with you today. So for a quick background on energy efficiency and our programs here at Con Edison, as part of the NENI framework, some of you guys may be familiar with New Efficiency New York. In 2020, the Public Service Commission ordered Con Edison and utilities to use $1.7 billion from 2020 to 2025 to fund a number of different energy efficiency and electrification programs across the state. So typically, Con Edison spends $400 million annually to support this energy efficiency and electrification work via our NENI budgets. We just applied for our new budgets from 2026 through 2030 at $400 million. So this budget allows the multifamily program, along with other programs, to provide incentives for energy efficiency and electrification upgrades. So the impact that we have as a multifamily program is about 4,000 multifamily buildings each year participate in our program, do energy efficiency and electrification work, and we pay them incentives to do these upgrades. So not only do we have a multifamily program, but of course we serve all of our different customer segments. So our energy efficiency programs are targeted to specific customer verticals. So we have residential, multifamily, small business and nonprofit, and commercial and industrial. This way we can tailor to the needs of our customers, look at the building types that they have, what equipment upgrades would they be more likely to make, how can we incentivize these equipment upgrades best per customer segment. On top of our energy efficiency upgrades, we do have clean heat or electrification upgrades as part of the New York State electrification program. So Con Edison has a clean heat offering under the statewide clean heat program. And we have different rates and incentives for the different customer segments as well, all housed under one clean heat program. So Con Edison today, we get a lot of our direction from market influence, regulatory side, and we are shifting our focus a little bit on the measures and the incentives that we are giving out to customers to make upgrades. So we are moving to a deeper electrification portfolio. So when we say we're phasing out certain measures, that just means we are providing less incentives for certain measures. So our look ahead or our view is that we are going to slow down or reduce incentives for lighting, natural gas equipment, refrigeration, and our home energy reports program, because we are shifting those same dollars towards deeper smart building electrification measures. So things such as clean heat, so air source and ground source heat pumps, building envelope upgrades, which enhance the efficiency of your entire building systems, and sealing of your building as well. So over time, you'll see us phasing out incentives and then looking to explore new offerings to really grow and strengthen our place in the market with smart building electrification measures. So I will share a little bit specifically about the multifamily program now. So to qualify for multifamily program, you have to be 5 or more residential units. You have to have an active electric or gas Con Edison account. And the way our multifamily customers access incentives is very typical to traditional incentive programs. A building understands the upgrades that they need to make, puts in an application with one of our participating contractors to do the work. We review the application, let customers know how much money they will receive in incentives, and tell them they can go ahead and install. The installation happens, and then closeout or completion documentation is submitted to Con Edison, our implementation contractor, and then we then pay out the incentives for this work. So to access those incentives, there are a few different tracks based on the multifamily customer that you are. So we have a market rate incentive for our market rate customers, and we have an affordable program, which includes a comprehensive and a non-comprehensive incentive path. If you are a low or middle income customer, you would go under the affordable incentive track. We also have in-unit installs, which is a program in which we have a team go into your unit and install LEDs, shower heads, faucet aerators. On top of our core incentives, we have an adder program. An adder program just serves as an additional incentive on top of what the multifamily program will offer. This adder program is available in specific geographic locations based on where Con Edison needs grid relief the most. So oftentimes, if you have an adder incentive on top of your multifamily incentive, we can cover up to 100% of the project cost on certain electric upgrades. On top of our core multifamily program, as we call it, we have clean heat. As mentioned, that's part of a statewide electrification effort. In general, our incentives can cover from 70 to 85% of the project cost, depending on if it's an LMI or market rate customer and measure. And we have a whole bunch of information on our website. Great resource if you were interested in learning more. So I just wanted to give a brief view because I'm speaking very high level about what the program does, but these are the incentives that we offer. So on the left-hand side, you will see the electric equipment that is eligible for incentives. For example, if you were to replace on the first line your common area lighting, so LEDs, controls, we can offer an incentive and give you money back for some of that project cost. Similarly, with all of the other measures, HVAC, elevator modernization, etc. on the electric side. And on the gas side, again, moving to more efficient equipment, we will offer incentives for things such as boiler replacements, energy management systems, steam traps, building envelope upgrades. We have a whole bunch of measures here. Okay. So to walk you through the application process a little bit, I did touch on this a bit earlier, but for the multifamily program, we work with a network of participating contractors that are signed up with our program. They know the ins and outs of the documentation requirement needed, how to submit an application. They work with our customers, and that's how customers participate in our program, by working with one of these participating contractors. So we will get an application with an account number and a description of the project. We just verify project eligibility and do our initial review in which we verify the energy savings. What is your new, more efficient equipment going to save you? And we determine what incentive you will be eligible for. We will present customers with a letter letting them know that amount so that they can know how much of the project costs we're covering, and then they can proceed to install. Once installed, we get completion documentation, we do a final review, we go on site to do inspections at times, and once everything is good, we pay out the project. And a note here for all of our projects at this time, you have to have that pre-approval to go ahead and install, and that we've seen this project application come through. To be able to qualify incentives. So what we don't want is for customers to come and say, oh, we've done all of this energy efficiency work, we've done these upgrades, but here's our application after the fact. That's not how our program works. You want to review and approve prior to the installation happening. And just moving on to highlight some of the success stories. We're constantly working on case studies and showcasing the great work that we do to help other customers see like in kind. What are similar buildings doing? How can I get involved? How can I make these upgrades? And we have some of that on our website. But just to quickly share electrification or clean heat project success story, we had a 6-unit multifamily building. They decommissioned their existing gas-fired boiler. So that just means they're no longer using it, and they were able to shift completely to an air source heat pump, and so they were able to fully electrify their building heating. That project saved 165 BTU annually and reduced their CO2 emissions. Of course, we were able to pay out $40,000 in incentive, and that covered 60% of the project cost, which is quite favorable. And incentives often make or break the decision to move out with the project. So we are very happy to support these projects financially. Another success story would be pipe insulation, which is something that, we expect we can see a lot more growth in this area. Sometimes it's overlooked, your boiler room, your mechanical rooms, the windows. There's so much of your building that can be sealed and insulated, and pipe insulation is a really great way to do that. We had a pipe insulation project in the Bronx. They were 3,500 linear feet of pipe that was able to be insulated, and that reduced 30,000 MMBTU annually, with obviously significant CO2 emissions reductions. Our incentive was $605,000, covering 70% of the project cost. And this customer had a 3-month payback period, so it doesn't really get much better than this. this is a great success story of how our incentives really brought down that project cost by a whole bunch. And that's the end of the presentation explaining our incentives. You can feel free to email me and the team at multifamily@coned.com. I know we're going to be addressing some questions in the chat later on, but thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you for taking time out to join us. Next up, we're going to have National Grid provide a presentation. So if Luis Rizzo from National Grid could come in.
So I'm going to share my screen. Just let me know once you see once my presentation uploads. Bear with me 1 second. Can you please confirm if you see my presentation?
I can, but I think Kimberly, yep, you should be good to go now.
All good to go? Perfect.
Yeah.
So hello, everyone. My name is Luis Rizzo. I'm the manager of the commercial sales team for Con Edison. I'm going to be covering a little bit about the National Grid programs and different services that we have available through National Grid to help reduce your overall energy usage and to improve the building overall. One of the things about National Grid, we service 3 out of the 5 boroughs. We provided services for all of Brooklyn, Staten Island, and 3/4 of Queens. We also provide gas service in Long Island areas too as well. So with National Grid, we're very concerned about the environment, and we're doing a number of different initiatives to help reduce overall carbon emissions for our customers. We're starting to introduce new greenhouse gas, renewable gas into our system to help reduce the overall carbon emissions. We're also looking into green hydrogen. We're doing some pilots right now, pilots to test out how it would be if we started fusing hydrogen into the system which helps reduce the overall carbon emission of the system to make it more and more carbon free. We're also doing a number of geothermal pilots with a number of customers in the Long Island area to test out to see how it would be to do a community geothermal and other types of things. We're also doing similar pilots in upstate New York to test out the market because we're trying to figure out what ways to electrify where it makes sense and how to improve the building's overall efficiencies. Within the National Grid programs, we have a number of different programs that we offer through National Grid. We have what we call custom programs, where we offer various types of incentives. We have direct install programs, where we have vendors that come in that do free measures for buildings, such as shower heads and aerators. We also have a benchmarking portal. So the portal just helps customers to upload their energy usage to Energy Star Portfolio Manager, so they can get their usage. They can be compliant with Local Law 84 and Local Law 87. This will help them to upload the energy usage so you can get a letter score appropriate to your building. Through National Grid, we also offer commercial weatherization programs, demand response programs too as well for our customers that are looking to curtail during peak load demand days. And also we provide incentives to those buildings as they're looking to reduce their load usage during those peak days to help the system overall. We also have, similar to Con Edison, an income affordable housing program called AIP, and I'll go through a little bit more about that program as well. So for our custom programs through National Grid, we offer incentives up to 70% of the project cost, with the maximum cap incentives in the New York City area of $200,000 and Long Island $100,000. We also pay up to $2 per therm saved for the projects. With these type of projects, we need pre-approval is required. So you have to let us know in advance before the project begins so we can screen the project to determine the cost effectiveness of it and also give you an offer letter to indicate how much the incentive is going to be upon the completion of the project. So when the project is completed, we'll pay out an incentive to the building. This will include projects such as combustion controls, energy management systems, thermal blankets, meaning insulation on top of the boiler, heat recovery systems, economizers, and a number of other measures to make a building more efficient, which includes also steam traps too. Within our direct install program, which is a program that's going to be sunsetting for us in January 2024. We offer free measures. For the rest of this month itself, we're actually doing a number of projects where we're going out and we're still doing some free measures for buildings, where we're installing some free shower heads, aerators. Installing some bathroom aerators, airflow restrictors, and in some cases, some free steam traps for buildings. This is done to our vendor AEA, and we'll do it working on buildings that are 5 units or greater. In our commercial direct install program, which is similar to a multifamily, we're going out to do the same things for some commercial customers, meaning for hospitals, nursing homes, hotels, and many other businesses and many other commercial style businesses where we're putting in free shower heads, spray valves, aerators. In some cases, we're doing some pipe insulation, some duct insulation, and a few of them we're doing some thermostats and some as well too for the direct install program through National Grid. These are free programs that are available. There's no charge to participate, and it's great because it really installs some low flow water saving measures as well as some heat saving measures for the building itself. Underneath our multifamily program is broken down to 2 components. Like Kimberly was indicating, as far as the different types of programs that are available through Con Edison, is similar to which is National Grid, which is a joint utility program. We have a comprehensive path and we have a non-comprehensive path. What that means is a comprehensive path, you have to reach about 100 points in order to get an enhanced incentive for that, and they give you dollars per dwelling itself. So there's a set dollar amount that we give you depending on the number of measures you're putting in per dwelling for that building itself. So it's really rich incentive depending on the size and scope of the building. So it could be very, very, very advantage for the building to really take advantage of these programs. However, they must qualify to be constituted as a low income building. 35% of the tenants or more have to be low to moderate income within that building in order to be classified as low to moderate income building. The non-comprehensive path is if a building has been quite efficient, is only looking to do a few measures to make it more efficient, we have individual incentives available for those buildings that we call non-comprehensive paths. So they can get incentives on individual things that they're looking to do. Steam trap replacements, maybe upgrade to boilers. Some of the measures that we indicate that would fall into Local Law 97. This would be another good fit for those buildings too as well. Underneath for our multifamily and commercial weatherization program, we offer incentives up to $19 per therm saved for buildings that are 25,000 square feet or larger. And again, we offer incentive cap of 70% of the project cost with the maximum cap of incentives for the Long Island area, $100,000, and maximum incentives for the New York City area of $200,000. These include, let's say, incentives for window replacements, door, attic, air sealing, and wall insulation. So it's a great program to have, and we have enhanced incentives now. So if you're looking to make any improvements within the building insulating, please take advantage of them now while the incentives are pretty rich. For smaller buildings that are less than 25,000 square feet, what we recently did is we introduced a similar program as the large commercial one, but to accommodate the smaller buildings itself. There we do the same thing. We offer incentives for windows, walls, air sealing, insulation for walls, door ceiling and walls insulation. This is another great program available, and it's going to be available for a short time as far as with the incentives wise. So please take advantage of all these programs while the incentives are pretty rich. Just to give you an example of customers that have participated in the program, what do they actually save? So I know we all talked about different programs, and we're all giving you some great examples as far as what customers are actually saving. But this is another good example within the National Grid service territory. We'll work with the large property owner, Douglas Element Properties. We recently did a number. They had 38 buildings within a complex, and they were looking to replace their energy management system. They weren't sure how much it was going to save, so we did a pilot with them. We did about 8 buildings, and which cost about $7,200 per energy management system, which they installed within their building. Total cost of that project was $58,000. National Grid provided incentives was $26,000, and the customer cost was around $32,000 for that building. The estimated savings for that building was around 15,000 therms, was roughly around $15,000 in savings, annual savings for that customer. For that project, payback for that customer was 2.2 years. They were so happy about the success about that project and the number of savings they were getting They actually did the remaining 30 buildings that they currently have. We also did a number of buildings. We also did direct install on those buildings too, where we got in a vendor and we put a number of measures, low flow shower heads, aerators. In some cases, we did thermostatic radiator valves for the building too as well. That building helped to save an additional 46,000 therms. If you equate $1 per therm itself, it's a $46,000 savings per year for the overall complex that they did. And again, it was a great savings for the building, and they did very well for participating in the programs. And we have many of these customers that have participated in our programs in the past. So these are just one example, but there's thousands of examples of thousands of customers that have participated and have seen some real benefits in utilizing the utility programs. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope you learned something, and we'll look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Louis. I'll just dive back in here with questions that have come in through the Q&A section of the screen. And I'm just going to start at the top and roll through. We've got some of the panelists, as well as some other representatives on the line who can jump in as they would like to field some of these questions. The first question, let me put it on the screen so I can see it, is why are there exceptions to Local Law 97, including New York City government, but not co-ops, especially small buildings? The answer is that the New York City government is not exempt from this law. They actually have a more stringent and shorter time frame to reduce their carbon emissions from their buildings. So they are not exempt from doing this work. And you know, there are ways to get a good faith extension and provide more time for compliance. The key issue there is working with the accelerator to understand, you know, really the extent of what your building would need to do to get in compliance. It may not be as costly or as drastic as you may initially anticipate. And as you've seen tonight, there are a lot of different incentives offered through the utilities. So monies that can be applied to your projects and financing that can help you initially cover the costs of these projects. And your buildings will wind up in a better financial position moving forward, because you will be saving money on energy, but also on maintenance and other aspects of the systems. So anyone else want to chime in on that on the panelists side? Feel free to mute.
Just to add what you said, Lisa, Local Law 90, I mean, depends how you define small buildings, but Local Law 97 does not apply to buildings under 25,000 square feet. So there is a big group of small buildings that are not being affected.
Addressed, yep, under 97. Yep. Thank you for pointing that out. Yep. So only buildings over 25,000 square feet are required to comply. This one is more finance related. I live in a JH co-op with a substantial mortgage, also large costs already to maintain its 100-year-old building envelope. I've heard that most mortgage lenders won't subordinate their mortgage to a city tax lien as required to obtain PACE financing. How then can we access lower cost financing needed to make these costly changes? And again, I'm going to turn that over to Andrew, but again, you know, really starting with understanding what envelope measures you're looking at. First, starting with those incentive programs. Again, you know, let's start to shave down the cost of what has to be financed, and then looking at the most viable and appropriate financing tools or programs to cover the rest of the cost. But Andrew, please add more there if you'd like.
Yeah. So as you know, I think I touched on it. PACE can be challenging. with the tax lien security that a PACE loan has. I wouldn't say that most PACE lenders won't consent to PACE, but it certainly there are lenders out there, and it can be a challenge and an obstacle to getting PACE financing. But that's why we have our non-PACE financing options, and we've actually done an RFQ for non-PACE options. We have 13 different lenders, and I went through very briefly, I know, and quickly, the different types of loans they are. And so again, it all keeps coming back to come to the accelerator. We can look closely at what your situation is, and then we can go looking at some of those non-PACE financing options if your lender won't consent to PACE. And I went through, again, very briefly, touched on a few of those examples at the end there. But those loans that I mentioned, the Catalyst loan and the Multifamily Express Green loan, are great alternatives to PACE.
Thanks, Andrew. Moving on to the next question. Oops, they're kind of moving on me. Hang on. I must be getting more going on here. All right. Many of the buildings under Local Law 97 in our district are co-ops and condos of working class income. Loans are not helpful. Are there any grants? And Andrew, I'll jump in. You can add. There are not a lot of grants. There are some grants for specific types of work. And again, they tend to, and again, it depends on your building and your needs, but again, talk to us to help us match you up with what may be available from a grant perspective versus incentives versus financing. So we're going to work through all the different money sources in that order. We obviously want to get you the free money first and start to reduce the amount of out of pocket for your building, and lower the amount of costs that would need to be financed. So, go ahead.
I don't know if you want to. Yeah, I guess it's kind of repeating what we've been saying, but yeah, the incentives and the rebates. There are some grants, like Lisa said, but they're not intended to cover the full cost. They're intended to incentivize you to get the work done. But we and I think if Lewis had a situation, a case study where the incentives paid for 70% of the cost in some cases. All of this is based on the work, of course, and it's case by case. But again, we have these options, and there's long-term financing that can be more affordable. So yeah, we can just please come to the accelerator.
Thanks, Andrew. Does an accelerator rep help with the Con Ed application process? Yes, we can help, but better yet, the service providers that we will refer you to are well versed, and they have to be affiliated to be in our program. They have to be affiliated with the utility programs where the incentives are available. So they are well versed and work closely with the utilities to complete those applications on your behalf. So we can help, but more readily, the service providers that you will select will be responsible for submitting those applications. And they often, will provide you with proposals that will show you, once they submit the incentive application, and once you get those incentives from the utilities, how that will reduce the cost of the upgrade that they'll be installing for you. So it is a supported effort. Anyone else want to jump in on that? Any of the utility folks?
Yeah, I will add that our participating contractors are often hand-holding customers to help them understand, what are you getting out of this rebate? How does this work? But they are often doing most of the work in terms of filling out an Excel tool or understanding the calculations. So we see it all the time. We know that co-op boards or tenants, they may not have the technical know-how at the time or the understanding to complete the documentation needed. So our participating contractors, as well as our implementation vendor who helps us roll out this program, also provides a lot of support.
Yep. And through National Grid, we have a number of reps internally that can assist customers if there's an issue with the application. It's a pretty straightforward application, very simple to walk through itself, but we have sales reps itself that can help assist you with one, identifying some measures, and two, if there's an application process to walk you through the completion of it. So it's pretty straightforward process. We helped out thousands of customers. We're willing to help out you as well.
Thank you both. Next question is, what is the unit cost to purchase and install an air source heat pump? I don't have the specific answer to that. I don't know if any of the utilities want to take that, but my off the cuff answer is it really is going to depend on the building and the conditions of that building that will have to be accommodated to install that heat pump. But anyone else want to jump in there?
So it really does depend, depending on what size, because they vary in size, the number of units that you need, how many air handlers, how many condensers. So it can vary quite a bit, depending on the scope and scale of the project that's needed.
Thanks, Louis.
Yeah, I was just going to add, if you had any more details on the specific building, you can email multifamily@coned.com to get some comparisons of projects and project costs. Or if it's a residential home, so that's 1 to 4 units, you could email home rebates@coned.com and ask the question. We can give you some comparisons.
Great, thank you both. All right. And another question maybe for Andrew, which lenders will consent to subordination to a PACE lien for residential upgrades? And when we say residential, it would have to be a multifamily residential, just to clarify.
Yeah, so I think maybe the better way to answer that is I'm more aware because I've gotten more involved when a lender doesn't consent. And I will say that the National Cooperative Bank, which is a very large, very active lender for co-ops and condos in New York City, won't consent to PACE. And they have reasons for that. And they'll offer a supplemental mortgage for you in lieu of PACE. So that's one lender that won't. Apple Bank won't consent. I'm not sure the reasoning for that, but with National Cooperative Bank, they do sell their loans, and so that makes it difficult for them to accept a lien in front of their loan. It's just part of the program. But some lenders will just not, entertain it. I think they don't always understand PACE. PACE is improving their building, and it's improving the credit for their own mortgage. There might be savings involved that can help their own mortgage. Also, I think some of the lenders are not aware enough of local law 97, and when there are penalties and buildings may not, if they can't, buildings may have may get stressed to pay these penalties if they don't do the work. And so by not allowing them to finance the work, they're kind of hurting themselves. So, they need to understand this better. And I think hopefully that will change over time.
Thanks, Andrew. And I'm going to just go into the next one for you, which is what is the 2023 interest rate for a PACE loan?
So there are 14 approved PACE lenders in the New York City Accelerator PACE program, which is what it's technically called. All of them, as I said, they're all private lenders. There's some banks now that are doing it, but a lot of them are different types of finance companies. So all of the rate, the term I described is by law. It can be the useful life of the improvements. The rates are up to the different lenders. So they are going to vary, but having said that, I think to give you a very broad range, I would say that they're probably 7% plus, maybe in some cases even 8%. And so they have come up like other rates have come up, but they haven't come up the way mortgage rates have. I think sort of as a very general comment, all of these loan or many of the loan products that I've been talking about, the PACE and the others, are all kind of in the same range, and mortgage rates are not much lower. So it's an interesting time. Everything is pretty even right now.
Thanks again. And the last question, which I'm not completely sure I understand, but I think I can glean the ask here is, could the accelerator please develop a metric and rebate for helping buildings with aging in place seniors who can't afford the 30% cost after the typical 70% incentive? So I think the question is, how can we help your building cover the costs that are left after incentive programs are taken advantage of? And I would just encourage you to reach out to our program. Let us take a look at your building, really assess where you are with your compliance status and where you may be, the amount of penalties you may or may not be facing, and just kind of look at your building holistically in terms of the upgrades and then also the incentives and the payback period. Because as I've said again, even though you may need some financing tool initially, your longer term return on that investment could create a savings for your building and tenants. So bring your building to us, bring it to our team. We've got lots of great resources and information and programs to connect you with, and we'll see how we can help you. So our last question, and then we'll wrap it up, but good question. Are ground source heat pumps an option in Queens? I'm not sure if either the utilities want to take it, but ground source heat pumps are great, and as long as there's good geological opportunity to pursue it, yes. But Lou, I see you came off.
Sure. So it all depends on the building itself. So it, with ground source heat pump requires them to drive or to make wells all the way into the ground. Sometimes they can go as deep as, let's say, 1,000 feet. Because depending on where we are, there's a lot of bedrock, so they may not be able to get deep enough, or, and depending on the building itself, it may not have enough space to bring in a truck to run the wells. So I think that it all depends on the building itself. If there's any access points, if there's garden style apartments where there is ample amount of access for large vehicles to go in to sink wells and to make it appropriate amount of space, I think it may be a good fit. But where there's buildings that are very tight and there's no access to, let's say, open space where they can drill wells and make the appropriate accommodation to get the trucks in, it may not be a good fit, because it may be challenged to do those type of things. And you can't put them in the basement. It has to be outside, just in case there's gas and stuff that gets released, over time or through the ground. So they always want to have an ample amount of ventilation when you're making wells. Lisa, I think you're on mute.
I am, thank you. Thanks for that additional information, appreciate it. And I think we are at the end of our time. I see Greg is back on the screen, so I'll turn it back over to you. And thanks again for giving us this opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Lisa, and thanks to all of our presenters, Kimberly, Lewis, Andrew. Thank you for coming by and sharing information. Thanks to those in the audience for coming and participating and asking great questions. We hope you learned something from tonight's presentations. And as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, we will be following up with the materials from this presentation. So you will receive an email with the slides and the contact information that was shown earlier in the screen if you have any additional questions. On behalf of Councilmember Krishnan, staff, just wanted to thank you again for coming out. Thank you to those on the back end. Shout out Waylai from our team, Jasmine, Marty, others for your work on the back end to create this presentation and make tonight's event happen. So thank you all for coming again. Hope you have a great rest of your evening. Take care.